Welcome back to After the Ashes. This is episode 2, or season 2, episode 5. I'm here, one of your podcast hosts, Steve. I'm here with Shauna.
It's me, Shauna.
Sorry.
I'm laughing and looking at Steve because there's a written introduction.
I know.
It says, welcome back to After the Ashes, the beautiful Altadena podcast on LA fire recovery through a public policy lens.
I was having some fun with some
You were?
ad-libbing today.
This is your co-host, Steve, and we're recording this episode on Tuesday, January 20th.
As you can tell, I don't always follow instructions very well.
I was trying to make it easy.
I know.
So where do we begin, Steve?
I don't
we
make
have
things easy.
so much to talk about again. Every time we think, oh, maybe we'll have a quiet week, maybe we'll take a week off, and then we realize, oh my gosh, we could just cover multiple podcast episodes weekly just doing media roundups and talking about what's in the press because there's no shortage. Every day we're like, what now? What fresh hell today?
Well, I told you that the title of the book I'm on to write, What a Disaster.
Mm-hmm.
An insider's view of going through this experience. I mean, I think that could be the title of most people's experiences. What a disaster.
I have to find mine. I think I told you that I was workshopping last year after the fire. I was like, let me start workshopping my memoir titles. And they're absurdly hilarious because, it was like, in fact, I put all of my brief life notes and my title ideas into AI. And you want to know what AI came back with?
What?
The story of a human punching bag.
Well,
fuck you, AI.
maybe working in politics is a good place for you.
Oh my gosh. That cracked me up to no end. I'm still laughing about that.
All right, well, let's get to the stories because, the Times with their new competition starting on Sunday.
Well, hold on a second. I think before we even get to that, let's talk about, we were talking about this, you and I, off podcast, since our last podcast, that the day after we recorded the podcast last week, where we were covering tax reform, Prop 13, capital gains, and all of this.
Yeah.
The day later, after we recorded, and a day before we released the episode, the Trump admin dropped their report on tax reform and everything else. And it was like, oh, well, we continue to be prescient, but I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Well, I mean, there's a lot happening there. I haven't really been talking to DC much the last couple of weeks. They've been a little focused on, things like Greenland and, other whatever drama Trump has come up with. But I mean, I think that there's a lot of receptivity right now to looking at some of these federal incentives to try to, look at how disaster can fit into that. In fact, I just had an email recently from somebody in DC discussing the Wall Street Journal articles, the second one, because we had one before Christmas and one, I think last week, it may have been right about when we were talking, where two separate groups, one is AEI, the American Enterprise Institute, which is a pretty center-right economic think tank, and then you had Stephen Moore and someone else who is another right-wing Republican economist, both talking about raising the cap gains exemption for homes to try to build some liquidity in the market, because I think they, like some of us who, aren't these major economists, notice that getting liquidity and utilizing some of these tax incentives will move these homes. I would say probably California's going to start paying attention to that too with Prop 13 coming up.
Yep.
But right now we're all fighting with ourselves about the Billionaire Tax Act, BTA. Beat their ass. I mean, like that's I know that's why they did it. They came up with the name.
It sounds like a boy
BTA.
band.
Well, anyway, I think it's but we'll get into the billionaire tax thing at some point, I'm sure.
Oh yes, we will.
But yes, let's focus on, like you've got here a bunch of really great stories.
I do. This one.
This is more like your alley. This is not.
Is
as much
it? Is it my? Is it my
based.
lane?
I mean, other than that piece about the soil testing and this government not spending the $70 million, and that was outlined in the LA Times, which was
insane,
absurd.
Yeah, so that was the first story on our list for doing a little bit of a media
That's at the
roundup.
state to do it.
Yep, it was LA Times, had a story. The title was "Leaked Memo Reveals California Debated Cutting Wildfire Soil Testing Before Disaster Chiefs Exit." And to the point that Steve just made, they discussed very much in this story, very very point blank in the story, that what it would have cost to do post remediation testing on all of our lots to ensure that we were left with a clean and safe community. And I want to add to that I'm sure you have heard that we have that we were left, with a very incomplete cleanup, right? If you've been listening to this podcast at all, or follow discussions in the beautiful Altadena group that I had, or anything like this, right? You've seen repeatedly the conversation around the fact that Altadena received an absolutely incomplete cleanup compared to the standard set with past urban fire cleanups, including Woolsey in 2018, that there was full remediation with lot-to-lot clearing, meaning not leaving this and that, and certainly not leaving debris behind, but full lot clearing. And then there was post-remediation testing, and if things didn't test clear of numerous things, not just lead, but numerous things, including lead, that they then were required to do another round of remediation, soil removal, and then retest.
But wasn't it too
that
much
didn't happen
cost?
here.
It wasn't the argument that
Correct.
it was going to be too expensive?
So the conversation was that, and has been from the inside and those who worked on this and were part of those conversations and contract negotiation, is that they were close to $1 billion short of what was needed to do the full remediation on all of the, what is it? How many lots were included? And also, it's worth noting that is part of why commercial lots were not included, where in other fire zones they have been, because it's pretty common sense to understand if you want to leave a community clean, you need to do the entire community, not leave the commercial zones up to the discretion of private owners who may or may not be able to afford the job and who may or may not use people who are actually going to clear. And we could go on at length about that, because there's still contamination on those types of lots sitting all over our community, despite the fact that County Public Works claims, according to their quote unquote GIS, because they're monitoring all of this by satellite imagery, that, it's fine.
Well, so they got satellite imagery to monitor this, but they didn't have the satellite imagery to tell us where the fire was going.
Oh shit, Steve.
Sorry.
Ugh, tell me more. We're going to get into that topic in a bit. But yeah, it's a very real issue. And so this was just this one piece. And, this is where people should really be hopping mad.
$70 million.
Correct.
It's not billions.
No, exactly. To do the post-remediation testing.
A fifth of what it costs to do Prop 50?
Correct. So to do post-remediation testing would have been at the top end, $70 million to do it on every property in Altadena. And this was also inclusive of the Palisades. We should be clear. This was the cleanup. So this wasn't just Altadena. It was Altadena and the Palisades following the fires in January 2025. And the call was that, no, we're not going to spend that money. So as much as we want to...
Because they wanted the federal government to pay for it.
Correct. As much as we want to blame the federal government because they didn't send enough money, FEMA didn't deliver enough money, we didn't get the same funding... The bottom line is, that is a real statement, but it doesn't mean, okay, great, so let's just fuck everybody. And that's what happened. And that is what was done here and what we are all now grappling with.
They found the money for Prop 50.
Correct.
They didn't have the money for our bill.
Correct.
They didn't have the money to give us our cleanup.
And we're going to talk about that too. And the issue around, so we're a lot of things we're going to get into today. But, everyone should be really particularly galled and disturbed by the fact that this is literal couch change for the state. And the fact that there is money for so much nonsense. Don't get me started on the money being spent by the county, our money, our tax dollars on all of their legal settlements, but we don't have $60 to $70 million to test and ensure that we leave people with a community that is actually safe to rebuild. I've asked repeatedly, what are we rebuilding for? How are we even supposed to rebuild when we don't know what's out? Or no, we do know what's out there, and it's nothing good.
Shauna, the governor is going to save $1.5 billion by cuts. He couldn't find $70 million for this.
That's the point.
The governor is out there touting his, budget that's coming. We all know that it's an immaterial number. I mean, material number for public accounting is 0.5% of the gross dollar. This is $70 million when $1.5 billion is the the material image, excuse me, the material, demarcation line.
Bless
So
you.
it means it's true. This is a slap in the face because I guess we don't matter enough for his presidential ambitions.
Correct. So, I mean, that's it. It's like, I don't want to go down the path of just trashing our governor.
No, but this is a decision that was made.
This was
by
a
the
choice that was made by the governor. And I think everyone needs to be really clear in understanding that this is where this choice was made. And it was a choice. And the choice was to sacrifice us. We continue to be the sacrificial lamb, the collateral damage of, other people's interests that are more important than us. And frankly, more important than us having a clean and safe community, because bluntly, it's not going to be their problem. It's going to be someone else's problem, because around the time we all start getting sick, they'll all have achieved what they want. They'll be out of office. Newsom may be president, or will have at least run his campaign, and so on and so forth. But you should be bothered, folks. People ask all the time, what can we do? What are we going to do? Write letters. Start writing letters. Start documenting.
Well, I
It's
always,
as quick as sitting down with an email.
and for those of you that don't live in California, you listen to this, or you want to pass it on to people who don't live in California. This is just a preview of what a national dynamic would look like if our leadership in the state was running this country. So
Yep.
I think it's a very clear indication, and those of you who read my Substack know I've been harping on this point a little bit over the last couple of days. So take a good hard look, folks.
Yeah. And, it's like, but what are the alternatives, Steve?
I don't know. I mean, that's not my problem, and they're not asking me to run.
I know, but it's all of our problem, I'm afraid.
Well, I mean, at this point, it's up to the party to find out. I think Rahm Emanuel put it well. I was quoting it the other day because it was in a piece about Andy Bashir that Politico had. And if you want to read the other side of this, it's Andy Bashir, who is probably, the anti-Gavin who's running. He's kind of more folksy, more down to earth, less television ready, but more of a worker. And, almost to the point of being kind of corny. But in that article, they had a piece that Rahm Emanuel called it resistance and renewal. That's how the party is dividing itself. Those that are the resistance side, which Gavin is moving into, our governor is moving into that lane, and the renewal side, which is, I guess he's mayor or ambassador, because I guess that's the highest ranking he's had. Ambassador Emanuel said that he wants to lead. And he too is running for president. I'm not sure, he's got a few things that he's going to have to get through to get there. But in talking about the renewal, because the current president has totally, reshaped government in Washington to the point that it's being hollowed out. And Rahm Emanuel is saying that maybe there's a chance to renew it and look at it differently and reimagine government. And it doesn't mean it's going to go back to the way it was. I could tell you that's not what's going to happen. But what it will look like, this is a chance for the next administration to really think about how they want to reimagine how we deliver governance and government and all the things that go with it. So you got me on that.
Yeah.
It's a sidetrack. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. They're all important issues. And I think the more big picture context people have for what all of this means and what's going on, the better, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because none of this, we've talked about this a lot, like none of this happens, in isolation, and none of it's happening, just here. We continue to be a microcosm of what is playing out on a national stage.
How many times have you heard me say that?
Yeah, it's the truth.
So, but I mean, that's just, to me, this story really, like you said, I haven't written about it because it's just so galling. I can't imagine that this is actually true.
I know.
But again, now here's up to the Times to not let it be a one-off.
Yeah, they need to follow the story.
And then it goes.
It's Tony Briscoe, who's been doing all this really fantastic, he's an environmental reporter for the Times, and he's been doing a lot of really fantastic writing following the not only the soils issues, but some of the stuff going on, if I'm not mistaken, with standing homes. I think he's done some of that coverage as well. Because all of those things, dovetail. I mean, I had a friend sharing with me last week that a friend of hers in our community had moved back into their east of home lake that was standing in a pocket of homes that are standing. She's not surrounded immediately by burned homes, so she's in one of these preserved pockets, not unlike yours, Steve.
Yeah.
And that obviously, like you, she had smoke and ash damage that she had to remediate, and she's just gotten through that, moved home. And she just said, even being where she is, quote unquote, away from the bulk of construction, away from all that, that every other day they're cleaning their windows and the house because it's filled with silt.
It's just dirty.
Yeah, it's just dirt because that so much of that dirt is moving around and it's in your house. And I would say, who knows what that's in that dirt? But we do know what's in that dirt.
Yeah, well,
and that's a problem because it should just be dirt, And I know that a lot of people want to argue that there's always been lead in our soil, and that's true. Or living in LA is unhealthy in general. I've heard that one a lot. That just living in LA at all, no matter where you are, isn't great for your health. If you want to have greater longevity, move out of a major metro. That's a correct state. That's a true statement, but it does not make any different how extreme and severe what we are facing is.
1,000%.
And I know that's a bitter pill for a lot of people to swallow, especially those who are in the process of rebuilding, those who are moving home, those who have been home and haven't left. And frankly, you are the folks that we need to fight twice as hard for because it should be safe for you.
Yeah, well,
it's true.
Again, this is just one more
slap in the face,
one more brick in the wall, so to speak.
Yeah, you're a brick in your wall, a slap in my face. I just find it's
right.
disturbing how much we are not cared about.
Well, again, I think this goes back to the failures of the county and the failures of the state. And I think that as much as they want to point the finger at Trump and the folks in Washington, there's the failures here have abounded, as you and I have talked about, and as has been documented again and again and again. The question now becomes, what are we going to do about it? It's one thing after another. When is somebody actually going to step up and do something?
Exactly.
That's the part that I think it's so, I don't want to say interesting. It's just so gaping. How can you sit there and not, and just callously just decide I'm just going to go ahead and do it the way I've always been doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make a change here. Why?
I know. It's so upsetting. I don't know how else to put it. It's just really, it's deeply upsetting. And there's more to the story, and we'll be coming back to it and talking more about it because unfortunately we're going to have to.
All right,
but we'll talk exactly. Let's talk about another time story, right? Another headline last week was, and this one hit NPR as well, was wildfire victims decry state law protecting utilities from the cost of disasters they cause.
Oh, welcome to the club, guys.
Right? I know. So this is what was interesting to me about this one. I don't think anybody disagrees, first of all, right? It's problematic. We talked at length about our
public risk for private enterprise.
Correct. We've talked about this at length here prior to all of this becoming news or becoming a thing.
We talked about this back in September, remember?
Correct. And, outside of that, exactly, as we covered the wildfire fund and, what that is and why it exists and how problematic it is that beyond that,
well, and because
we talked about
when they were talking about renewing it, and remember,
I know we talked about our favorite senator who was like, "Oh, I didn't know,
duped. I didn't understand. Oops!" Come on.
Yes, exactly. The lady doth protest too much, but that's exactly where I was going with this. But it's fascinating to me that this is becoming a headline again right now, and why? Because I think there are some orgs who have, as we have had good coverage with media. And it was interesting to me to see that, we're going from trying to get SCE to pay people this $200,000, upfront, which is great, but it's magic. I would love that. I mean, it would help me tremendously, it would help my neighbors tremendously, but we all know it's magical thinking. It's never going to happen. So why put this much time and energy into something like that? It begs many questions, but it's the same with this of okay, let's decry the fund.
Where were you in September when they were reauthorized, when the governor was twisting arms?
And beyond that, now what? We want to get rid of the fund and fuck everybody in the neighborhood? Because that's what would happen.
Well,
the fund is the only way that people will even remotely be made whole out of this. It's why we're not suing the county.
Well, first of all, I mean, the failure here, well, we're not suing the county, but yeah,
Well, no, but
now.
it's why people are not suing. I mean, some people will.
But
Well, we'll
this
get
was
to
a
that too.
regulatory failure. I mean, look, back to this wildfire fund. You know my opinions. If we're going to publicize the risk, then the public should be able to benefit from it. And
Correct.
it should be a public utility.
That's right.
I mean,
And we
and
feel the same about this.
I am not a socialist by any stretch of the imagination.
I'm the socialist, not Steve.
But
For my listener, for my Substack reader who is convinced I'm a Trump voter, which is, I don't even know where to go with that. I was like, you clearly don't listen to the podcast or actually read anything. He's waving his hand at me like, pshaw, but I'm still laughing about it. That like, it's like, it reminded me of the time I got yelled at about, it was a party. I'm going to go on a little bit of a non sequitur. Ages ago, we had a party for a friend. We had a piñata. And they brought a dominatrix piñata, and it was like an inside joke. Okay, it was an inside joke. It was hilarious, and someone at the party got so angry and said, "Oh, whose idea was it? To think that let's like beat the woman is a funny game. Like what kind of sick misogynist?" And I was like, "It was an inside joke. It was not. It was more of a power move for the women in the room, not that." And
okay,
ultimately,
I've dug myself in some holes with this one. I'm waiting for you to land this point.
No, that was it. That was the whole thing. They were like, it literally was like the room went silent. It was like, who is the misogynist? And I was like, it's me. I'm the misogynist. Which again, if you know me, I'm the biggest feminist in the room. So it was a bit of a thing. But anyhow, I laugh at this shit when it's just so far off base. But I think it also becomes an excellent example of how, we don't talk, we don't listen, we don't communicate, and we are all conditioned to be so sequestered in our little spaces and our labels and definitions, and that, everything else is a dirty word. And it's not. We have to have like, how often do we say here, the call's coming from inside the house? Like, we're a democratic state with democratic leadership. We can all be Democrats.
No, but
and
it's the
also
Republicans' fault. Because they're so powerful here in California.
Well, listen, I mean, fuck them too, but because there's a long list.
But they're
the
just,
fuck them list is getting longer every day.
It's not even worth like fuck them because they're so bad. It's like it's not even like it's almost like you feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
Like the Democratic Party has its convention in Sacramento at the convention center. The Republican Party had it in a hotel, at a Marriott or something in fucking Anaheim. I mean, like. Really? A hotel ballroom? Like that is the opposition here? But anyway, we'll get into this because
we'll
there's
get into
a lot
it, but
more that we're going to talk about. But
to wrap up this point on this, with the wildfire fund, because we've talked about it a lot here, and I just thought the timing of this was curious. Like, why are we talking about this now as we are literally on the precipice of heading into settlements for everyone? Do we really want to blow up our fund while we're trying to get everybody settled out?
At this point, no, look, if they were going to talk about it, it should have been in September.
Correct.
And the fact they're bringing up now is like,
what?
We don't like it, but what can we do about it?
Well, I'm sorry.
Let's
I'll
talk
say,
about how we could potentially fix this down the road.
I know.
Sure
So I
that's
will
gonna be
say
a
out
nice
loud the thing
conversation.
I have said repeatedly in private spaces, because if you know me, you know I will. There's nothing I will say in a private space to someone that I will not say outside and out loud to everyone. And that is really simply that, what is the goal? What are we hoping to accomplish other than to keep ourselves in the press? And, and that is an important point. We do need to keep Altadena in the press through any means necessary. That means everyone doing their part to push these stories as far as they can.
As long as you don't jump the shark.
As long as you don't jump the shark. So I will, and I'm afraid that was this. And then it begs the question, like, what are we doing here? For what? To what end? Yeah, I would love an answer. So my commentary on that, because I did make a public comment on that, and I'll share it here as we wrap this one up, was very simply, that this is problematic, right? But it's the only thing that will likely even remotely make anyone whole after this, because there is that money there. And the alternative would be bankrupting a utility, leaving us all holding the bag, which is exactly what happened in Paradise, where you have people 7 years, now going on 8, who still have not seen a dime, and most of whom got a pittance of what they should have gotten. And I think that speaks, more than anything else to why that town, 7 going on 8 years later, is only 23% rebuilt, which is horrifying. But,
it is apples and oranges.
It is. I agree with you, in part because of this, right? They didn't have the benefit of this. So
they also were a second home community. They weren't.
There are a lot of things.
They're not,
different demographic.
They're not a major metropolitan
correct. They're not
center.
exactly. So, ultimately, I just said that the $22 billion wildfire fund, while unsavory and ultimately emblematic of how problematic a private for-profit utility is, it is the only mechanism that will ensure people will be made even remotely whole through legal settlements after this disaster. So if the private utility was entirely on the hook for this, they would simply bankrupt and carry on, which is exactly what happened in Paradise. The problem here isn't the fund, it is the private utilities and the state and county authorities not holding those utilities accountable to maintain their equipment or otherwise follow the law. And I closed with that because, we've talked about this before. There have been laws on the books for literally 50 years requiring utilities to remove decommissioned equipment like the towers that started this fire, allegedly.
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
But I also believe that we need to figure out a better way to do it.
I agree. Well, I think we need a public utility. Let's just all share. Let's all take, a part of this profit.
Yeah. Or then the utility should be putting that money in escrow. I mean, or some other way. It shouldn't be on the ratepayers to have to pay. I mean, because effectively 50% of it comes from us as ratepayers, and then 50% comes from the shareholders or the utility, which of that 50%, how much is just inflated on your bill to pay for it? So your ratepayers are paying this. And that doesn't seem fair that the maximum amount of money that the utility shareholders are going to be on the hook for is $1 billion, which is insured for SCE. Like, for their incompetence because they decided not to maintain their lines, it's cheaper for them not to maintain the lines than it is for them to, do that. Like, they got the Ford calculus 100%. And for those of you that don't know what the Ford calculus is, it goes back to, in the late 70s, Ford Pintos were these very popular cars. And the calculus at the time was, what happened was if the car was hit from behind, it would explode, where they put the gas tank. And so the recall would have been so expensive that the calculus was, we'll just take the litigation and pay out the costs. It'll be cheaper than doing the recall. But in reality, and this is common in product liability. We're having this problem with my wife's car right now. Her engine is the same thing.
Yeah, we're talking about the lemon law.
Yeah. And but in that case, in the Ford case, my dad's cousin was actually the Undersecretary of Transportation at the time, and he's the one who blew the whistle on Ford and made Ford recall and pay out. So they got the double whammy, which didn't work out. But for Edison, this calculus worked perfectly. If I was their attorneys, they're probably paying them very well right now.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
$1 billion, that's it, for a disaster.
Yeah, sounds about right, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So let's should we move on to another story? Another headline was Black Enterprise was covering the latest at Little Red Hen Cafe. So for those who don't recall, who haven't heard in past episodes,
we talked about this.
We have talked about Little Red Hen because it's such an important business. It was located on North Fair Oaks, fantastic cafe, coffee shop, community hub, but particularly significant for the Black community, as it was, not only a hub for the Black community and for West Altadena, but also one of the, if not, I believe, the longest running Black woman-owned business in Altadena. So it very much a heritage business for the community, a landmark, one of those things that, is precious for everybody and needs to be maintained. And so they've been working hard to try and come back. They had a GoFundMe. They've had, donations from the campaign that Paris Hilton did. They had some money from the 15% pledge, which I'm very, anyhow, I know one of the people involved with that and love her. And GoFundMe, and despite all of that, so they were working on buying the lot. And days after the fire, weeks after the fire, the owner, Perry Bennett, had told them, if you want to buy it, you can buy it. Here's the price. They got the money together to buy the lot, and then Perry reneged the offer and said, "Oh, I've changed my mind. It's not for sale now." And so now he's looking at how can I basically jack up the rent on these people, which, needless to say, could very much force them out. So it's really problematic. The Shays, who are the family who own Little Red Hen, were saying that they were initially quoted $500,000 to buy the property, and were assured the sale could move forward. But then he changed their mind, said, we're not selling. We want to keep it. And they have no doubt the rent's going to go up. And so, I feel like this is just, again, it's another example of what happens all over, right? Not just here in Altadena, but everywhere. When you are beholden, if you do not, especially as a food and beverage business, which is obviously I'm a little more sensitive to, given that's been my industry for so long. If you don't own your property, your business can be decimated overnight by a rent hike. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. So to see this kind of thing happening, this is economic warfare on our community and our businesses.
Well, what did we call it last week? A siege?
Well, it is a siege, right? It is a financial siege. Or as I say, they're smoking us out. So, this is another example of that. And it was really disturbing to read this. And I hope that they find some path forward. And I hope that the landowner comes to his senses and does the right thing. I don't think it's everyone's job to be the savior of all business and, make a great deal. But I mean, we saw this happen with the woman who owns, Two Dragons Martial Arts, right? Sipu. And I always hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. But, it was this very similar situation, but at least with the owner of that land, they did not back out on the deal. And she was able to fundraise. She was able to buy that land and will be able to return. So that's fantastic. But, that's obviously not happening everywhere. I noticed the old liquor store adjacent Mariposa Junction on the southwest corner of Lake and Mariposa.
Yeah.
Huge for sale sign up. That is for sale. The similarly, the corner where Side Pie was located, that beautiful historic brownstone that was unfortunately destroyed by the fire. At the top corner, the southeast corner of Lake and Altadena Drive, that has also been for sale now for some time. So it's, we're going to have to imagine what this community is going to look like. I mean, we know we're not coming back to the same community, right? We've also said repeatedly that not all change is bad, but it's going to be significantly different. And with the way that the things are being done right now with SB 9 overriding our CSD, both of those properties could end up being tall mixed-use buildings.
Well,
yeah.
You get what you pay. You get what you vote for, people.
Well, I mean, except we don't. I agree with you on that statement in general. But here, I think this goes back to
but everybody's
Altadena doesn't have a say.
Yeah, but everybody's been given them look at the.
Who's everyone?
I don't know. I just feel
because
like
Altadena doesn't have a mechanism because we have no leadership or voice.
I feel like
except for our town council, who's rolled over. They've just rolled over
because we don't vote. And I mean, I'm one who didn't vote in that, but I think you've got the supervisor, you've got the senator, who gets a lot of leeway from a lot of the community groups.
Yep.
So
she's screwing us left and right. Sorry, I'm going to go there because
I just think
truth.
that unfortunately, these are our people, and what's good for thee is not good for me. I mean, this would never happen in Alhambra where she lives. I can tell you that right now.
And it sure as hell wouldn't happen where Catherine lives in San Marino.
Oh, hell no.
Exactly. Oh, hell no, indeed.
All right, so
shall we talk about our last story, which was Cal Matters did a small business story that, it was really, to be blunt, it was kind of a puff piece, which I expected more from Cal Matters.
But Cal Matters is all AI now anyway. It's AI driven, or it's human. What is it, like designed in California, built in China? Like it's the same kind of thing. It's like idea from a human and then written by AI.
Yeah, it was fine. I was glad to see the people they spoke to, because they spoke to, some really great business owners. They talked to, who was in there? Zach at Prime Pizza, Fair Oaks Burger. Anyhow, there were a few, but it was basically the headline of this one was how Altadena businesses are trying to recover from the Eaton fire. And the takeaway from all of it was that small businesses have been, left out to dry in so many respects. They've been cut off and cut out from so many aid and grant programs that they're not eligible for. What they are eligible for is incredibly limited, insufficient, and it's certainly not going to ride people through the next 5 years as they try and wait for people to come back to town, because it's going to take at least that long. It'll be 5 to get a percentage back, and 7 to 10 before we get everybody back. And how does anyone make it?
This is one of the things that I've been pinged on by a few of the electeds. Not necessarily our visible electeds.
Yeah.
But, economic development is going to be a conversation, and what that's going to look like, and what our commercial
Zones will look like.
and what our commercial organizations will
Mm-hmm.
be. There's still a lot to be determined here. I think right now they're focusing on getting people back into homes, and then they're going to focus on the businesses. And Altadena's sort of been a hodgepodge up to this point, but there are ways, and those of my who are readers know that I've written a few pieces on this, that the small businesses and the economic development in our area could be tremendously leveraged if we had the right leadership. But unfortunately, leadership on economic development it's hard here in California because there's not a lot of business people that are involved in these spaces. And the remaining people that are, I've got a good buddy, we can bring him in, he could come on and explain it all to you. But the people that are involved in this really are more academic than they are actual practical business people. So
Yeah.
and so they don't.
They're disconnected. They don't understand. This has always been the case.
What they're
I've
offering is, it's totally,
I have said for a very long time that California, and I say this as someone who's had multiple small businesses, been a partner in multiple small businesses, helped to launch thousands of them, literally. And I have said so many times, because it is sadly the truth, that California likes to pay a lot of lip service to small business, that we're small business friendly, that we support small business, we want small business, we love small business. But when push comes to shove, when it's time to put your money where your mouth is, it never happens. Like, we are left out. And this could not have been made more clear during COVID, which, decimated an unbelievable number of businesses, including mine. All my business was lost to COVID overnight. And, outside of that, I'm one of the people, like, someone else who was quoted in that Cal Matters story, who lost a cottage, actually a little different. They had a home-based business with the home-based office. I had a cottage business. I had a cottage bakery. And I lost all of that. And, this is where I'm the person who was uninsured, because I had just let my business insurance, that was a food-related insurer, lapse that December, so that in January I had planned to start a new policy with the Hartford, because I had the Hartford previously and I liked them, and I was like, I need to get big girl insurance, so to speak, and move from this small policy to a more meaningful policy as I ramped up business. And I was right in between that, because this happened on January 7th, in the middle of a holiday. So I ended up, really screwed, like so many. I was completely uninsured for that loss, and it's that alone a significant six-figure loss. So it's not good. And people ask, we're going to bring it back, restart. No, it's such a hurdle between having to now find a space, because I don't have a space. The space was built in. And I don't have a built-in space. So it doesn't make sense. And I've lost all my recipes, and I've lost all of my supply. It's like, it's that were collected over so many years. Like, it's hard to explain. It's like, the threshold is so high.
I get it.
That, I'm going to invest, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make, a fraction of that over X number of years, because it's getting harder and harder with costs to make this make sense anyways.
Well, and California is not conducive to business anyway. I mean,
We're not.
And, there's macro level things going on here that, we can talk about later. But
yep.
I'm definitely somebody who wants to try to figure out the small business side.
Me too. No, I could not want that more, because we so desperately, we need it. Like, people don't realize how much of our economy is dependent upon small business. I used to talk about all the time with independent business, how much more meaningful those dollars are spent. People don't realize the percentage of your money when spent with a local small business that stays in your community versus going to, Target or another, or, worse, Amazon, where every dollar is sent out. Not zero stays in the community. And it is a significant economic driver. And, here we are letting those businesses die on the vine, which sadly they're going to. I've said from the day one, like, some of these guys will survive because they're multi-unit. They have other revenue streams, et cetera. But those who don't, they've got a very, very tough road ahead of them. And I really hope that we, as a community, not just in Altadena, but in LA at large, have what it's going to take to continue to support these businesses and rally for them for the long haul, because it's going to be a long haul for them.
Well, if we build back right here and we do the right economic development and bring the right businesses into the community, there should be plenty of support for a lot of these smaller businesses to be able to, you have to think about it as two parallel paths. You have the housing side and the residential side, but you also have the commercial side. And the commercial side has gotten a lot of short shrift, as Sean has talked about. It's not just the small businesses, but, we actually could be bringing in other new businesses and startups and, incubating these things. And
absolutely,
we're totally ham-handed in all of this.
Yeah.
But again,
behind the 8 ball on all of it.
We could talk to her blue in the face until our electeds and our people running our government here actually do something about it, And in fact, I have a plan ready to go. I'm waiting to talk to the federals about it because we got some good news last week.
Are we talking about our opportunity zone funding?
No, it's a way that we can build and bring in government contracts to our community.
Amazing.
And, it looks like another state is very interested in it. And so if they are willing to do it, there's no reason why we can't get it done here. Okay. Having said that, should we move on to the next topic?
We can move on to the next topic, but I want to close this one out and saying I really do hope we see some opportunity zone movement, because that
will be part of it. But
solve so many problems and create so many new opportunities in a meaningful way that we otherwise are not seeing.
But there's a way that we can structure the businesses and bring them in, and we can have not necessarily a centralized mechanism to do it, but a more direct community-based solution that can be starting and spawning businesses, and especially with our relationship with JPL and Caltech, and with the fact we can get CRA money for the next year or 2 years and get qualified for that. We should be able to do a lot of these things if we have the right leadership, and I'm waiting for them to step up because the plans are there, and there are ways to do all this, and it's very frustrating to watch it not be done.
It is frustrating. This whole process has been frustrating.
Yeah, well,
There's so much we could have done better and differently, but let's not. Let's just kill the town. It almost feels like that is the directive at this point. It's maddening. So on that note, let's move on. Let's talk about where one of your stories, right? So last Friday, you were talking about every Angelino's favorite topic, every Californian's favorite topic.
You mean the one the governor took his victory lap on?
Yeah.
Yeah, homelessness. So
because we've solved homelessness.
No, we haven't.
I was saying the governor, according to the governor.
Governor,
we fixed it.
Okay, so here's the interesting thing about the governor's state of the state. And then Politico had a piece after that they had like a roundtable discussion that they wrote with Liam Dillon, Melanie Mason, and I think one of their other California writers. And so they started talking about the governor's victory lap on not homelessness, but people getting off the streets. And, we're all very aware that we have spent $24 billion in this state. And really, we haven't seen a marked change in homelessness until the last year. And why? And so everyone's talking about all these different reasons. And, I said to myself, I go, we're all missing the big one. And that was the Supreme Court overturning Grants Pass, the decision that was holding basically the Western states hostage and forcing, people to be able to sleep in parks because there weren't enough beds in homeless shelters for various people. So now we have a 9% drop in people on the streets about a year later after that decision was starting to work its way through. Shauna, do you see it?
I know, right?
And it wasn't even mentioned. Do we see any
parallels?
And it wasn't mentioned. And so I said, there's that. There's also the care courts, which, again, one of the things that we had in this state was, I think it's the Lanterman laws, which basically grew out of One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. No, literally. And the idea being that, people who are committed to asylums would no longer should be able to have agency over their own affairs, and that they are should be given human rights, which I agree with. But not everybody who is not everybody can manage their own affairs, unfortunately. And unfortunately, there's a lot of mental health issues that are out there.
Thank you, Reagan.
And so, no, this was Lanterman. This was the Democrats. And then everybody said Reagan shut down all the asylums and all the hospitals.
That did happen, though. That did happen.
Because everybody cleared out. And so there were nobody there. So then all of a sudden these hospitals closed. So yes, it was technically Reagan, but I mean, it's all about how you want to look at it through which lens. I'm just.
Okay, I appreciate
I'm not.
the history.
I'm not. This is not about the history. Other than everybody likes to point fingers, and I think people need to stop pointing fingers and start looking at what happened. So, fast forward to the governor's care courts. He's kind of backtracking a little bit on the Lanterman laws, and allowing people who have mental health concerns to be represented by other than themselves. So that also helps to push people into treatments and get more support where necessary. So I think you take those two things, which neither of which were mentioned in that article. And then I thought about it and I go, it's interesting. If you think about that Ninth Circuit decision and what that one decision has wrought on our state. We spent $24 billion and we got nowhere. We've created an industrial complex of homelessness, support, and building that is unrivaled now, and so much so that we now have Measure A, which was designed to reduce the housing crunch on people who are experiencing homelessness. I mean, this thing is going to go on and on and on. The tens, if not potentially hundreds of billions of dollars, all because of this one Supreme Court decision, is unbelievable. I mean, if you think about it, what do we have, 70,000 people who are homeless in California right now? Just give them the damn money. Like, holy shit. I mean, it really is crazy how many people are benefiting from this. And so I think when you take a step back and you think about it, you go, this is where activist judiciaries can have a negative effect too, because I know there's a lot of people out there that believe that the decision was right from a human rights perspective. I also think you have to look at it from the policy perspective, where there's a tremendous amount of cost associated with this one. And again, Governor, thank you for pursuing it at the Supreme Court. But the fact you're not saying it was the Supreme Court leads one to believe you didn't want to offend too many people on that one. So,
yeah. I mean, I think, anyhow, there's no shortage of these stories on what happened with that money in various channels and audits
you
and
mean
exposés.
like the Weingart
Yeah.
Foundation, or not foundation?
It wasn't
Weingart
them,
Center.
Exactly. I mean, there was even a local example. I will never forget reading about this because I grew up in Glassell Park, Highland Park, Eagle Rock, basically Northeast LA, in the 70s and 80s. And so that's
You're
community. I'm very much that old, but don't tell anyone. But I couldn't help but notice, over the last few years as they were building those, tiny houses at one of the parks in Highland Park, right off the 110 freeway. So every time I drive through there, I would see them being built, and then I saw them by
KDL,
right, and then I saw them occupied. And when I saw what it was costing to build each of those, I was like,
it's
"Oh my
God, thousands of dollars."
Oh no, yes, it was like close to it was like $400,000, $400,000 per little tiny, basically shack. These are like Home Depot sheds.
It doesn't matter when you have grant money coming in and no reporting, really.
Exactly. And sound familiar? Does it sound like something we've talked about where money goes when you have ways to channel it with very little oversight and reporting? Where it looks like it's very legitimate, but
so
who's following the dollars? It's insane how much of this money just bleeds out everywhere.
Did you read the piece I wrote on the budget situation? And because we were joking about who doesn't want to run for, I'm sure we're probably jumping ahead to the next.
No, they're jumping to the next episode.
But the idea being, in California in 2007, we peaked out at public education. The number of people in the schools was 6.3 million. We've dropped by 500,000, but our funding went from 67 billion to 135 billion. So we've doubled the amount that we spend on public education. We've reduced the number of people that are getting the education, or we're demographically declining. What the hell?
I know.
And that's on autopilot, folks. Like, if you want to talk about where California's budget is in trouble, we can nibble around on all the fringe stuff, but it's education. 136 of our 340 billion is there. And then what Medicaid is probably another. I haven't even looked at that one yet. But I mean, you start looking at these numbers, you start going, what's going on? And then add in the fact 20% of people at UCSD can't even do remedial math.
I'm shaking my head.
$136 billion, folks. Yep. Where the hell is that money? And if you'd say and this goes back to 782, it's for the kids. Remember?
it's but the children.
It's always about the kids.
Children.
And
it's an emergency for the children.
What the billionaires tax, part of that's going to go to K through 14. Like, guys, we got to start thinking about this stuff. So anyway.
Yep. That's a fun one. We had another topic for this episode, but we've had so much to cover. I think we're going to, and I know we're running long as usual, that I think we hold it for the next episode, and I'm going to close it out with our small biz shout out.
Sure.
Does that work?
Yeah.
So I wanted today's small biz shout out, I wanted to give a note to a couple of our thrift shops in Altadena, right? So everybody knows Full Circle Thrift because it's in that beautiful brownstone building that was formerly
the train station.
Exactly, the station for the tram, for the tramway, Mount Low Tramway, which is beautiful. And go look at that history if you haven't seen it. But that is one of the small miracles that building did survive because it's one of our most historic structures. And since we lost so many, I know for me when I drove up the day after I say day after, but so many homes burned on that day on the 8th, but and structures, I watched them, but I was so happy to see that was not destroyed by fire. And they were able to reopen, and they were on my mind because I was with a group of Altadena women the other day, and one of the topics that came up was how great the selection at Full Circle had been lately, that like the really good donations were coming out. If you haven't been to Full Circle Thrift in a while, now's the time to get your booty up there because there's some really, really great stuff. I think someone had found like an amazing Isabel Marant jacket, and get yourself to Full Circle Thrift. There's a lot of good shit to be had. But our other thrift shop in Altadena was the Daisy thrift shop, and it's coming back. So I wanted to give Daisy a shout out and make sure people know that they are reopening on January 24th this weekend. So hopefully, people can go out, support them, and know that they'll be open. And that's another great spot, especially for everybody who is, like too many of us, starting over.
Indeed. Buying
everything all over again. And if you want, I don't know how it feels for others, but I don't know, having everything new felt so wrong for me. And so I've been trying to find things that, were somehow, vintage.
Previously loved.
Yes, previously loved or vintage, antique, et cetera. Just, it's not everything is that, but some things, because you want some sense of time, history, place, right? And that's helpful. So, yeah, I feel like thrift shops are such a great place. And, of course, on the economic front, because so many of us really don't have enough money to do everything we have to do. Indeed. So wherever we can save it, it's great. So I will close out on this on a personal story because I was sharing this morning with Steve. We are now a year past the fire. And all of this time, as we were just discussing, like I lost my business, but I also had a home office for my other business or even, my consulting work. And obviously I lost my home office and everything that was in there as well. But I finally set up a new office the last couple days.
Yep.
And like, it took me, this is how long it's taken. It took me a year to even try to undertake that, to go, to get filing cabinets, to try to reorganize things, to be in a mental place that I could even start that process. And I still had a few things in my old office storage. I'd just done a huge liquidation when I was working on renovating my house. So sadly, I would have had a ton of stuff, but I just got rid of all of it. But what I did still have in there was one of the desks from my old office that was this cork top desk that I used as like a guest desk when people came to visit our office and wanted a little workspace. And it was one of those things like I had my desk and that wasn't my desk, but it was in my storage. And I brought it home last night and set it up in a room in my rental house. Sorry, I'm just laughing because there's a cricket here in the studio. And it just got really loud. We have a cricket. Very loud cricket. Anyhow, it feels like the bayou in here right now. It was wild for me to find that, to bring it in and to have it, to enjoy it and use it and give it new life but also I did not expect what it would bring up for me, Steve. I had it was a really deeply emotional thing. Like once I brought something from my past life into this space with all of these new things because my entire past life was effectively erased. It was a lot. I was like, what is this? And I realized, oh my gosh, this is, I'm going to unpack this with my therapist. It brought up a lot, but it was really nice to be at a desk, and I was super productive this morning. So
Yes, you were.
it was.
You got a whole spreadsheet full of stuff.
I did. I know. And you saw the email I sent to the county, and we're going to talk about in the next episode.
Oh, yeah. So with that, I think we should bid everyone adieu.
Adieu. Thank you always for listening. Thanks for sticking it out with us. I don't know how our listening ship goes up every week and stays solid. I'm like, I don't know who you people are, but we love you. Thank you. This is why we do it. Hope it's helpful. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Shauna. I'm at Beautiful Altadena, Instagram, our Facebook groups, our Substack, and I'm here with Steve.
I'm the Alta Policy Wonk for all those that really want to fall asleep while they're reading something.
It's really good reading.
Oh, thanks, Shauna.
It is. We'll see you next time.
Bye now.